Well, hi there, food friends. It's Kevin, and welcome to Cavalcade of Food. And today we are back in the cookbook library. I'm going to ask your indulgence up front. I just am getting over a really crazy late spring, early summer cold, and I actually lost my voice last week. Everybody in my life was quite happy because I couldn't talk for about 3 days. But anyways, it's coming back, and so I may need a sip of water from time to time. But to the point of today's episode, we are going to talk about Pillsbury and the many cookbooks of Pillsbury. Pillsbury is another name synonymous with American baking culture, and it is an old company that was founded in 1869 by Charles and John Pillsbury in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so a shout out to our friend Greg and other food friends in the great state of Minnesota, where Pillsbury was founded. And over the years, Pillsbury, like so many other food producers, put out cookbooks that would help you find new and creative and successful ways to use their product. Earlier, we did a whole thing on the Betty Crocker cookbooks. So Betty Crocker, who was not an actual person, but the Betty Crocker cookbooks were published by General Mills. And General Mills owned Gold Medal Flour. So you had, sort of this overlap. General Mills and Gold Medal Flour and Betty Crocker, they're all kind of the same company. And if you look in those Betty Crocker recipes, they'll tell you what flour to use. And when you look in the Pillsbury books, they'll tell you what flour to use, and that's, of course, Pillsbury. So they began publishing recipes early on. And in terms of actual cookbooks, I have a little sampling here of cookbooks, but they were always a company that offered recipes in other ways besides actual purchasing a book. So one of the older examples of Pillsbury is I have this book here. And this is Pillsbury's Diamond Anniversary Recipes. Okay? So it's their Diamond Anniversary, their 75th anniversary. So if you want to do the math, they were founded in 1869. They were 75 years old in 1944. So that's when this was published. And it has all kinds of recipes here, including, it's actually a beautiful book. It has great photos. This is the Pillsbury 75th anniversary cake. They came up with a recipe, makes 3 8-inch layers. They came up with a recipe designed to celebrate their anniversary. But this has got all kinds of great recipes in it, and some of it coming out of previous Pillsbury publications. So, Pillsbury's 75th anniversary there. Then I've got all kinds of small little Pillsbury booklets. This is Do It Together Butter Cookies. So basically this is, cooking with your kids. And of course on the back there's pictures of Pillsbury flour. Here is Party Best Butter Cookies. Decorating made easy for everyone. Pillsbury for a while was selling cake and cookie decoration in a can, sort of like the spray cheese. I don't know if they even make that stuff anymore. Well, they had a topping that came out of an aerosol can in different colors, and so that went with that. Here's one for Jewel Box butter cookies. Butter cookies were big. Using Pillsbury's best flour. This flour has been pre-sifted for you, light, fine, and fluffy. 48 butter crust parfait pies. Oh, that looks good. And then here's an interesting one. This is still in the original mailing envelope where you could send away for recipes. There would be little promotions on the back of the sacks of flour or boxes of different flours that you might buy in the store, Pillsbury. I don't know what year this is from, but I'll tell you what, the postage on this is 3 cents. And it's Pillsbury European Recipe Service, and I thought that sounded pretty exotic. And then when you open it, it has these sort of almost postcardish recipes from around Europe. Here, Italian pizza. And if you look on the back, there it is. And it even tells you how to pronounce it. Pronounced pizza. So, again, I don't know the copyright date on this. I'll have to see if I can find it. But if a lot of Americans didn't know what pizza was or how to pronounce it, this probably goes back a while because pizza really came to be popular in the U.S. after the Second World War. We had a lot of servicemen and women who were stationed in Italy during that time. And of course, they had pizza there, and who wouldn't have loved it? And so you had Italian neighborhoods that might have had pizzeria, but pizza rarely got outside of that neighborhood. But now you had all these people experiencing pizza when they were in Italy, and they wanted it, and so pizza got real popular here over time. But here's a dappa, a orange lattice coffee cake. Looks like from Sweden. Here is a Cookbooks chicken pie from Paris, France. Austrian recipe, Zurich. Anyways, really fun, all these cards. And then Pillsbury would, from time to time, this must have cost them a lot of money, put in these big inserts into the newspapers, the Sunday newspaper. Remember when we all read, people under 30 or 40, you might not remember this, but there was a time where the Sunday paper was kind of a big deal. And it had not only all the news, but it also had all these supplements in it, and magazines. And the Sunday paper was something I would just languish over. It was just a wonderful ritual to read the paper on Sunday. But anyways, included, sometimes Pillsbury would run these big kind of recipe magazines. And here, 15 Great American Recipe Inventions. From the, oh, here's the year, 1968 Bake Off. We're going to get to the Bake Offs in a bit here. But here are recipes that came out of the Bake Off contest in 1968. And a little image here, since this is 68, of Poppin' Fresh, also known as the Pillsbury Doughboy, who is still around and is still cute. They came out with the Pillsbury Doughboy in 1965. So the Pillsbury Doughboy was only 3 years old when this came out. But what a great marketing mascot that was. And also in 1968, raise your hand if you remember this, 1968 Pillsbury started selling space food sticks. Do you remember this? These were food sticks that the Pillsbury lab had developed that were fairly nutritionally packed, but they were like a solid food that astronauts would take up in space, so to eat and for nutrition, and you could buy them. I could never get my mom to buy them. I think she bought them one time, but all these other kids at school would always bring them for lunch or whatever, and I was always, oh, I wish I could get one of those. And you couldn't buy them at the corner store, like you had to buy a box of them at the supermarket, and Mom just didn't think the space sticks were that cool. But anyways, I did get to try a few because I had some good friends who would give one to me. But anyways, so Pillsbury, great legacy with recipes and food. I have actually a couple of paperback editions. Here is Ann Pillsbury's baking book. This is from 1950. 1950. So 1950, that's 74 years ago. Unbelievable, hard to imagine. Anyways, Ann Pillsbury was Pillsbury's version of Gold Medal's Betty Crocker. Ann Pillsbury didn't exist as a real person, but the fictional character sort of ran the home economics test kitchen in Minneapolis at the Pillsbury headquarters. And this is a great book. There's really a lot of great recipes in here, not just baking, but there's a lot of savory dinner recipes in here as well. If you ever run across this, pick it up. They printed millions of them. They're out there. And then in 1952, this book was 35 cents when new, is Pillsbury 300 prize recipes. So 1952, 300 prize recipes. Now you can enjoy $25,000 recipes, $10,000 recipes, 300 fabulous recipes that won a total of $427,000 in prizes, the most talked about recipes in all America. So this was a compilation of recipes entered by finalists in the Pillsbury Bake Off. 1952, this book is from. The first Bake Off, and it was not called the Bake Off, was in 1949, and it was called the National Baking Competition, Grand National Recipe and Baking Contest. And we'll talk about that in a bit. We're going to get through some of these other cookbooks first. Pillsbury got into the cookbook act a la Betty Crocker and Better Homes and Gardens with a binder edition. This is 1963, Pillsbury Family Cookbook. and a hardcover edition for those who didn't want or didn't have room for or couldn't afford the binder. You could get this instead. Same book. And this is, again, a 1963 edition of the Pillsbury Family Cookbook. And it has sauces and soups, menu planning, casseroles, one-dish meals, desserts, seafood, cakes, pastries, meats and poultry, breads, rolls, muffins. It's a nice book, great color photographs throughout, a lot of instruction here as well. This is a good learning cookbook. They weren't quite as popular as, say, the Betty Crocker or Better Homes and Gardens. I think they had a bigger network distribution, and a lot of the Pillsbury cookbooks you ordered from Pillsbury Products by filling out a coupon and sending in your check or money order. They'd mail it to you. So this is the 1963 edition. Then we go on to the new Pillsbury Family Cookbook, and this is a 69 edition, I believe. Nope, I'm sorry, my bad. It's 1973. This is the 1973 edition. So 10 years later, the new Pillsbury Family Cookbook. And then we get another edition, I think about towards the end of the 70s. Yes, 1979. We have this, Pillsbury Kitchen's Family Cookbook. Again, hardcover, binder edition. And these are, of course, updated to include, it says right on the front, new microwave ideas. In 1979, microwaves were still very much coming online and getting mainstreamed into American kitchens. And some people weren't quite sure what all they could do with their microwave oven besides, reheating leftovers and things like that. So, and melting butter. But anyways, this is a nice. These are all nice. If you see these out in the thrift stores or used bookstores, they're nice additions to have. General cookbooks, again, akin to, excuse me, Better Homes and Gardens and Betty Crocker. Then, of course, Pillsbury, like Better Homes and Gardens and Betty Crocker, put out any number of kind of more specialty cookbooks. They did one for cookies. They did one for cakes. Food that's good for you. And then they put out some annual cookbooks. Here's the 2010 annual recipes. Here's 2012 annual recipes. And these include Pillsbury Bake Off contest winners. But more beyond that. Pillsbury, for the bake-offs, they used to have a couple of contestants from each state, 2 of them. And, people would send in their recipes for consideration, and they were judged somehow by a panel. And they would try to have even representation from around the country, so you wouldn't kind of have people from every state would have equal chance. That's how they did it. I don't know how they do it now. And then you have, here's one, Pillsbury Bake Off Main Dish Cookbook. So, you know, when the Bake Off started, and again, it didn't start by being called the Bake Off, it really was a baking competition, and the only required ingredient that every recipe had to have was Pillsbury's best flour. Had to be an ingredient in the recipe. Everything else was fair game. But this was also at a time before Pillsbury was making what they're quite famous for now, which is prepared refrigerated doughs for crescent rolls and biscuits and cookie dough and cinnamon rolls and you name it. I mean, you see all the Pillsbury stuff there in the grocery stores. So they weren't making that stuff certainly in 1949 and early on. But then as Pillsbury started to introduce more products to the marketplace, they would allow recipes in the bake-off that would encourage and include use of those other products. So then the bake-off went from being strictly a baking competition to one that also included main course and savory dishes, in addition to just sort of breads and coffee cakes and pastries and things of that sort. So this one is from 1968. And so this is the Pillsbury's Bake Off Main Dish Cookbook. Log Cabin Chicken Pie, chicken turnover, Chuck Wagon Roundup, Tijuana Hash, Polynesian Tuna Bake. Let's see. Oriental Celery Crunch, Shrimp Salad Puffs, Cheese Ham Wheels. Oh, those sound good. Soufflés, Pizza Loaf, Chuck Wagon Loaf. Anyways, so a lot of these kinds of books Pillsbury has put out over the years too. And even today, I haven't looked lately, but some grocery stores, or remember we used to call them supermarkets, as you go by the checkout, they would have next to the National Enquirer and Globe and all those tabloid magazines, there's often a rack there with magazines with cooking periodicals, and I from time to time will see Pillsbury publications there on one subject or another, and so I believe Pillsbury is still in that game. But we've got, like I said, all kinds of examples of cookbooks and hardback, paperback, spiral bound, all kinds of promotional advertising and little sendaways and giveaways and special anniversary edition books. But I will say, I think one of the things, certainly my generation of people, and I guess I'm a baby boomer, that we associate with Pillsbury, and that is the Bake Off, the Pillsbury Bake Off. And the First one, again, was in 1949. It was called the Grand National Recipe and Baking Contest. It was held at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City, in the Grand Ballroom. And every contestant had their own General Electric, brand new General Electric range. So can you imagine the logistics of setting up the ballroom in the Waldorf Astoria? Now this is 1949, so we're only 48 states. We're not 50 yet with Alaska and Hawaii. But with 2 contestants from each state, that's 96. Can you imagine setting up 96 electric stoves? And these were GE stoves, which in 1949 were 40 inches wide, okay? I'm trying to remember, I read somewhere how they pulled in all the electricity, the extra electric service needed to power almost 100 ranges, all going at the same time, by the way. I don't know, they tapped into like a New York, a subway line under the hotel or some crazy thing. It was quite a feat. But up for grabs in 1949 was a grand prize of $50,000. Now, I'm someone who still thinks $50,000 is, nothing to sneeze at. But in 1949, $50,000 was an incredible amount of money. A brand new car was like $1,600, $1,700. You could buy a house, a newly built home wasn't $10,000. So $50,000 was a lot of serious money. I understand the grand prize now is $1 million. So, everything is in proportion to what it was. But in 1949, everybody who was a finalist and who was at the Waldorf Astoria got at least $100 for their recipe. Some got more because they may have came in as a second or third place winner. And they also got to keep the brand new General Electric range that they cooked on. How they got it back to Peoria or, Altoona, I don't know. But they were able to keep the range. That was like their consolation prize. No matter what, you got a stove out of this deal. So you can imagine how competitive this was. There were people who probably entered the contest just at the chance to get to go to New York City, exciting, in 1949, and get a brand new General Electric range for free. So, if you watch the food channels on TV, there's all these food competitions. And I don't watch a lot of those because, frankly, I don't know. In sports, there's things that you want to compete at, and other things it's like, why does everything have to be a contest? Someone just show me how to make a really good omelet. Those are the cooking shows I want to see. Show me that, okay? I don't need to see who can make the craziest cupcake or whatever, but that's me. Anyways, I'm really on a rant today. I think it's because my voice was shot for 3 days and I couldn't talk, and so you guys, unfortunately, are making up for lost time. But we're going to look at some Pillsbury Bake Off books, and I I just wanted to put into context what a big deal this competition was in 1949. It captured the nation's attention. You don't really even hear much about it today, although it still exists. But it was culturally, it was a very big deal in 1949. And by the way, the master of ceremonies in the early days of the Bake Off was Mr. Art Linkletter. And please raise your hand if you know that name, if you remember who Art Linkletter was. And he was the MC at the Bake Off for a long time. And at the very first Bake Off, 1949, the grand prize award winner received their check for $50,000 handed to them by Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, come on. That was a very big, big thing. A very big deal. Eleanor Roosevelt hands you the check. Can you imagine? This is why, this is, I'm just trying to exemplify how major this was. And it really made the name. It was a brilliant marketing move, and it cost a lot of money to put this thing on. But boy, what they got out of it, it really put Pillsbury front and center. So we're going to take a look at some of these Pillsbury Bake Off books next. Okay, friends, we are here. I actually have been collecting Pillsbury Bake Off and specialty recipe books for a long time, and I actually put them on display here because I reference them often. Here's what I'll tell you about these Bake Off books right off the bat. I haven't yet made a recipe off of one of these that wasn't good. They really are great recipes, all of them. So let's start at the beginning. And the beginning is 1949, and here it is. From Pillsbury's $100,000 Grand National Recipe and Baking Contests, 100 prize-winning recipes. 1949, ladies and gentlemen. The first book, right here, first edition. And here is the first recipe. Is the grand prize winner, the one who got the check from Eleanor Roosevelt. The recipe, no knead, K-N-E-A-D, water rising twists. And this contestant, who happened to be a woman, matter of fact, just FYI, in the history of this contest, only once did a man win the grand prize. It happened one time. The rest of the winners have all been women. So, there you go. Okay, but just an interesting little fact. But the winner of this is Mrs. Ralph E. Smallfield of Detroit, Michigan. So, as someone who was born in Detroit, my hometown, I love the fact that there's this wonderful Detroit connection with the Bake Off. There's actually been two winners, I think, from Detroit, another one in 1963. But the very first winner in 1949 was Mrs. Ralph Smallfield. And when I show this to some of the youngins that come and visit, they laugh because they think it's funny that this lady's name was Ralph. I said, no, 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 her name wasn't Ralph. Her husband's name was Ralph. Well, why is her husband's name there? Because it was 1949. And if you were a married woman, that was your name. So she had a first name. And I believe it was Theodora, actually. Theodora Smallfield. But they didn't put it that way. They put Mrs. Ralph Smallfield because that's how it was. And younger people don't think that's right. And I remind people that history is always a mixed bag. There's great things about being nostalgic in that, and there are other things that we think differently today about, like that. But it's just part of the history. So, the second prize winner got $10,000, not bad either, from Naperville, Illinois. Now that was Miss Laura Rote. So, Miss Rote. And then third prize got $4,000 from San Marino, California, Mrs. Richard W. Sprague. And then best in class went to Mrs. Estella Worley from Los Angeles. So anyways, here's the 1949 book, the first one. Then we get to the second one. So this would be 1950. Again, Pillsbury's second Grand National Recipe and Baking Contest. And 1950. And who was our first prize winner? Mrs. Peter Wubel, if I'm saying it right, from Redwood City, California. She got an orange kiss me cake. Sounds pretty good. Anyways, that was the second. Here's the third Grand National. And you've got people here. Art Linkletter congratulates Mrs. Weston on her cake. Oh, another person working this one was Arthur Godfrey. Again, raise your hand if you know who he was. Okay. And this one's actually got some really great photos in the ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which is where they had it for many years. I mean, how you couldn't get much glamorous than that. Anyways, here's the fourth. Here's the fifth, 1954. Just look at the stuff on these covers. Who would not want this stuff? Look at these recipes. Okay? And then when you turn the back, of course, Pillsbury. So these sold for $0.25. These were 25 cents at the checkout. I think a good investment for sure. And they also had, you could send away for teaspoons and silverware set. Always had all kinds of fun offers here. Anyways, we can go right down the line. I've got them all. Here's the sixth, 1955, 25 cents. Pillsbury's Best. Oh my God, just so many good. These recipes still hold up. Check this out. There's the range. There's the stove that you got to keep. Matter of fact, this is almost a twin to the one that's currently in the kitchen studio that I have had in there. all this time. The GE, it's a, not sure what, Stratoliner. GE Stratoliner, which is a single oven. I have the Liberator, which is the double oven. But it says here, one of the most exciting and impressive events during the bake-off is the sight of 100 glistening white General Electric ranges all lined up in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf. Each contestant is also supplied with a General Electric mixer as a standard part of the equipment provided for preparing her prize-winning recipe. After the bake-off, each of the winners receives a GE Stratoliner push-button range and GE Triple Whip electric mixer as special bonus awards. So that was for this one, the 6th. Here's the 7th. And it goes on. I want to get to the 10th for a reason. So the 10th was 1969. Here it is. The back has got this really great picture of the winner hearing her name announced that she won. So I'm sorry, this is 1959. This is 10 years. This is the 10th annual. So this is 1959. Did I really win? Mary Ann Waslow, winner of the junior division at the 10th Bake Off, could only register disbelief when the news was announced. She's from Grand Forks, North Dakota. Well, it was the 10th book, the 10th contest, where it went from the Grand National Baking Recipe and Baking Competition to the Grand National Bake Off Contest, which is what we called it since then. There's Art Linkletter hamming it up with grand prize winner. Quite something. Oh, here. It says, it has, the pictures alone are worth it if you ever come across these books. The recipes are all great. I can't recommend them highly enough. They all work. They are really tested and good. But I love the photos, and here's one with a young man. It says, Boys Bake Too, as proved this year by Greg Patton of San Francisco, who won second prize of $1,000 in the junior division. And then, of course, it has a picture of the stove that the winners got. That's what I would have wanted. Well, the money's good too. But anyways, so we went to we got to 1959 and we started calling it the Bake Off, and then it went Bake Off up through today. And then you have all these other Pillsbury books that have come out, like here's Bake Off Cookie Favorites, which is cookies from the Bake Off. You know, they took it in all kinds of directions. A treasury of Bake Off favorites, cookies, main dishes, desserts, cakes, breads. And then, you know, Pillsbury also simultaneously was putting out Pillsbury's Best Cakes, Cool Ideas Cookbook, Bundt Cake, Bundt recipes. You know, when Bundt Cakes came out, Tunnel of Fudge, we did that on Cavalcade some time ago. Bundt Cakes was a big deal, kind of like chiffon cakes. It's amazing how these these fads have always been around, that there's a new kind of cake to make, a new kind of pie to make. And then Pillsbury had some other ones that are really fun, like the best loved Christmas foods. And then, of course, all kinds of bread cookbooks using Pillsbury flour, butter cookie cookbooks, Pillsbury meat cookbooks, the Nice and Easy cookbook. Don't they look happy? Looking at that. There's the Pillsbury Doughboy. Convenience. Here's a more modern, sometimes this is what you see in the store now. Like here's a Pillsbury book on good Thanksgiving recipes. I still like these. Oh, here's one I should pay attention to. There, Calorie Slim. And Pillsbury's Sweet Thin Cookbook. Pillsbury actually had a product that they sold. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called Sweet 10 or something like that. It was cyclamates. And I think some of us will remember that was cyclamate was a very popular no-calorie artificial sweetener from the 1960s that eventually was taken off the market because it turned out it wasn't good for you, like so many things, and replaced with saccharin and all this other stuff that they use now. But anyways, so and then of course this is one of my favorite Pillsbury, and this was their slogan: "Lovin' from the oven." A lot of great recipes in there. So, the world of the Pillsbury cookbooks here in the Cavalcade Cookbook Library. Really fun. And I love going through these cookbooks with you and sharing them. And got a lot more to do, but I wanted to hit the Pillsbury lineup today. So I want to really thank you for spending all this time with me, and knowing that you're out there watching and appreciating the videos makes me feel motivated to do more, and I enjoy doing them. And so again, I can't say anything but thank you, and I appreciate you watching. I hope everybody is well. I hope we're through Memorial Day, which means summer is a big green go. And so I hope everybody's summer season is off to a great start. And I wish you all well. And there is a website called cavalcadeoffood.com, and I also have an Instagram at Cavalcade of Food. So if any of that interests you, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. That helps the channel out tremendously. And I will just look forward to seeing you again real soon back here on Cavalcade of Food. And until then, take care, everybody. Bye.